Welcome, everyone, to the final political candidate forum in advance of the August 18th primary election. Many of you are familiar with our forums, but this year, they are bigger and better than ever. This time, our series is a cooperative production of the Capital Region News Collaborative and the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee. Our candidates today are running for the position of Tallahassee Mayor, Tallahassee City Commission, Seat 4. I'm Julie Montanaro with WCTV, and I'm joined by William Hatfield with the Tallahassee Democrat and Danielle Irwin with the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee. We're going to be questioning the candidates on various topics of interest to the voting public.
And throughout these forums, other journalists from the Capital Region News Collaborative have rotated through these seats to ask questions. In addition to the Tallahassee Democrat and WCTV, you've seen folks from Capital Outlook, WFSU, WTXL, and Tallahassee Reports on this stage. The collaborative is committed to providing deeper community-centered reporting on local issues. You can learn more about the collaborative at cfnf.org/CRNC. The candidates for today's race, Tallahassee City Commission Seat 4, which is also the position of mayor, are currently sitting left to right in alphabetical order. We have Lorraine Ausley, Michael Sean Faust, Jeremy Matlow, and Daryl Parks.
Reminder for those watching us on social media, please hit the share button and help your friends see today's discussion live. For those at home, here's how the forums will work. We'll rotate which candidates get to answer first. We have a lot of questions, so we'll ask the candidates to keep their answers to about 45 seconds, sometimes shorter for follow-ups. We will keep time. We have a bell which will ding when your time is up. Candidates, you don't have to come to a dead stop right then, but please finish your sentence and we'll move on. We will also have a rapid-fire lightning round of questions with shorter answers later in the broadcast. Any questions before we start? Great, then let's jump in with the first question.
All right, we're going to keep it real general on the first question. Tell us about your experience and what has prepared you to be the mayor of Tallahassee. 45 seconds. Ms. Ausley, start us out.
Thank you. I am born and raised in this community, and I love it. I've spent 14 years in the Florida legislature, in the House and the Senate, and I'm a bridge builder, a problem solver. I got things done. I brought millions of dollars back to this community, and I'd like to do that in the mayor's office. I think we're ready for civility and positivity and getting this community moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Faust.
Well, I hail from Osceola County, and I moved here in 2002 to go to Florida State. When I graduated with a psych degree, the economy was pretty bad, so I fell into IT. I worked for the state of Florida for 18 years and private sector for another 8, and I started my own business 2 years ago. In that time, I've learned that it's very hard to succeed in Tallahassee because we're a small market, and I wanted to use the power of the mayor's office to uplift other citizens here so that we can become the city that we were meant to be in the 21st century.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow, 45 seconds.
I'm Jeremy Matlow. I've served on the City Commission for the past 8 years, so I have extensive experience in local government, which is really rolling up your sleeves, working with neighborhoods, handling disputes, and prioritizing what our city really wants to see. I think my really experience as growing up in Tallahassee, I was raised by a single mother of 4 kids on the south side of town. I stayed in Tallahassee, started my business, Gain Street Pies here. I'm an avid outdoor enthusiast. I think I have what it takes to kind of bring together different sections of our community and lead us into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parks, close us out.
Thank you. My name is Daryl Parks, and I have spent my life in this community ever since I came in to go to college, working in Sickle Cell Foundation, Bond Community Health Clinic, Florida A&M University as a trustee and as a booster, but also as a business owner, starting a very successful law firm in this town, helping people every day, resolving problems. I spent my career resolving problems, and what makes me unique for this position is that as the mayor, I can use those skills to bring us together and to lead us in a great way that brings integrity to this community that we're accustomed to.
Thank you. Mr. Faust, we've got a quick follow-up here. The shortest question of the day. Is Tallahassee on the right track? 30 seconds.
Well, 20 years ago, somebody told me that Tallahassee reminded them of Austin, Texas. And 20 years later, it still reminds them of Austin, Texas 20 years ago. That's what the qualifier was, 20 years ago. So we need to modernize our city infrastructure, and we need a strong tech background in our leadership to direct our resources the correct way so that we can provide gig economy services to keep things in Florida, and we can have other services that are available all in one spot for our citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Mallow, is Tallahassee on the right track?
We're not on the right track right now, but I think we can be. We really need to look at our priorities, focus on affordability, how much people are paying for their homes and their utilities, address our violent crime problem, jumpstart our economy. There's a lot of things I think that we should be focused on that seem to get overlooked at our city, but I think after this year, I think we can get back on track.
Mr. Parks?
Without question, the next mayor will need to get us on track. We have a situation where our city is seeing a commission that doesn't get along, and we need a mayor that finds a way to bring us together, to work together, to find a common goal, but then more importantly, to execute on it. That will get us on the right track. It's going to take the right leader to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Osley?
I think we're on the right track, but we're sort of stagnated. We haven't had large growth in the city, and we need jobs so that our kids and students will stay here. I think we're in an amazing place. I think it can be better. I think the next mayor can lead us to that next chapter.
Thank you. All right, another follow-up. The mayor is often the public face of Tallahassee in moments of crisis. Describe a time you led during conflict and what you learned from it. Mr. Matlow, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I think as my role as city commissioner and business owner, what we see most is look at when we got hit by the hurricanes. I think that's when we really all have to step up and show what leadership looks like in our community. I'm proud of my role as both a commissioner and a business owner, literally feeding the public, working with the Red Cross to make sure people were getting access to the things they need. I think that's what we need in the next mayor is to, get away from the political infighting and really focus on the things that matter to people. And I think in those moments, I've showed leadership and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Parks?
I've been a leader since I came here as a student in 1990. I started serving as a student body president. And from that day to this one, I've had many leadership positions. Ultimately, certainly as a trial lawyer in this town, as a civil rights leader, leading many big issues publicly. And so as the next mayor, I bring a wealth of leadership experience at a very high level that I believe our next mayor should have.
Thank you. Ms. Osley?
So I've been in leadership in a number of conflicts. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting was horrific for the state and country. Obviously, COVID. I was in the legislature during COVID. But I think the most significant is Hurricane Michael, which impacted these communities that were in my Senate district and needed so much help. And I was able to bring together partnerships and bring resources to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Faust?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The moments, mayor is the public face of Tallahassee, moments of crisis. Describe a time you led during conflict and what you learned from it.
Yeah. I remain calm during conflict because it's the only way to de-escalate things. And it's the only way to keep your decision-making pure and free from emotion. So you can look back at any number of times in my career with the state. One particular conflict was a consolidation that we had where we were combining several data centers into one data center. And we had some infighting about which goes where, and I held a summit meeting where we all got together and came to an agreement.
Thank you. All right, we're turning it over to WCTV for a very important issue.
Yes, certainly. This November, voters are going to be deciding on a proposal to significantly expand Florida's homestead exemption, which would mean $29 million of lost revenue for the city in just the first 2 years. What specifically would you cut, and what would you keep? And we'll have Mr. Parks start there.
Well, I would start with number one. I think we have two silos here. First, that there are things that we must do that we are required to do by law, and I would protect those things. That would be the first silo. The second silo would be those things that are discretionary, and I would mandate that the managers who are over those budgets go through your budgets and decipher between the two, and then those things that are discretionary, we'll have to, as a commission, sit down and prioritize those issues that we believe are the new priorities given the new landscape that we exist in.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Ms. Osley.
I think we have some real decisions to make if the amendment passes. It has to get 60%. But I understand why property tax owners are very concerned about their expenses right now. And I mean, we're talking about a huge hit to our community. And the biggest hit is going to be to law enforcement. We've already talked a little bit about law enforcement and the need, to strengthen law enforcement. That is absolutely where I would not cut. And I think we need to be thinking about the trade-offs of voting for this property tax amendment. It will be the bottom line is we need to have someone who has experience with the legislature and with all walks of government to be able to have the conversations to make sure we're able to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Faust?
One more time, was that a two-parter?
If the homestead exemption amendment passes this fall, what would you cut? What would you keep?
Okay, public safety is non-negotiable, so we keep fire, police, and our consolidated dispatch agency. The things that we cut obviously would be in discretionary spending, but I think that we could find a lot of ways to save on employee cost, which is 77% of the city budget. So we would encourage employees to save in different ways with healthcare, flexible savings accounts, and benefits that are already available to them that they don't know about.
And Mr. Matlow?
We have a city with a $1.2 billion budget. Every budget year, I make recommendations for over $5 million in cuts we could do overnight. It's looking at executive level salary that's ballooned out of control. It's looking at non-essential travel and food purchases. And then it's looking at departments like strategic innovation that we're really not quite sure what they're doing anyway. So it will be a challenge to go through the budget, but we can easily find these savings. But I will say we should be reducing our expenses proactively. We shouldn't wait for the legislature or the voters to tell us to go and find cuts. We should be doing that on the front end. I don't support the legislation at place because I think local government is best deemed to find those cuts and savings, and I think this will probably just push the tax burden onto renters and business owners, and I don't support that.
All right, next question is a follow-up. Would it be possible to not raise other taxes or fees if voters do approve this property tax overhaul? Ms. Osley, we'll start with you.
Anything's possible, but we won't know. And I think it's important that we look at the trade-offs between what this property tax amendment would do and the services that it would impact. We're talking about law enforcement. We're talking about fire. We're talking about the parks. We're talking about services to humans, and it's really important that the city provides the essential services, and so. It will be interesting to see what happens.
Okay. Mr. Faust, same
Yeah,
question.
absolutely. Part of my plan to revitalize the modern services would bring in additional revenue that would be legal without raising taxes. So we'd be able to keep the third that's going to Silicon Valley in Florida, and we could keep that here so our gig economy workers make more. I'd also have creative things like hospitality funds to smooth out their income over the years. And I think we can find creative ways to lease out our existing data centers to companies where we make sure that the city is benefiting and the citizens benefit from anyone who wants to do business here.
And Mr. Matlow, same question to you.
Even if this passes, the city is going to continue to deliver the essential services that people expect. We can find the savings, we can find the cuts if needed, but that's also going to take a change in political direction. If we continue the way the status quo has operated, the only option will be to raise taxes if we're not willing to find those meaningful cuts.
And Mr. Parks.
I'm very committed to making sure that we do nothing to raise other fees or taxes in lieu of the changes that could come. And I think it's important that we live within our means and try, and certainly the budget process that I outlined before, that we use that zero-based budgeting process as a basis for operating going forward.
And our next question, even with the possible cuts, do you support a plan for a 4% across-the-board raise for all city employees? And Mr. Faust, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I always support the across-the-board raises for public sector workers because they work hard, and a lot of people think they're lazy, but they're not. They do a lot with a little. They don't have a lot of training, and inflation is 3% every year. We should be able to find enough savings and cuts and revenue, which is what we aren't all talking about, to pay our employees a living wage and bring them up with inflation each year.
And Mr. Matlow.
I think if you make 10 times more than the lowest paid employee, you shouldn't get a raise that's 10 times more than the lowest paid employee year after year after year. That's how we've seen the extreme imbalance and discontinuity of our pay raises throughout the years. And so, no, I don't support giving pay raises to people who make over $150,000 a year. I think we need to tighten up our belt and lead responsibly.
And Mr. Parks.
I think the answer to the question would be no, not across the board raise. However, I think it's important to go and look at the history of what's happened in the past, the priorities. And one example I would have would be like the consolidated dispatch center that we have, right? They have some issues there that they need to solve. That may be of higher priority as an example. So I think studying the history of the different departments within the city and determine what the priority should be rather than just a blanket across the board raise when the priorities may change depending on the situation.
And Ms. Osley.
So I spent 14 years in the legislature working hard to make sure public employees get pay raises, because these are hardworking people that are our neighbors. People in state government, people in city government. It's the person that's fixing your lights and doing things across this community. And so, yes, I think they deserve a 4% pay raise. And I think that, it's important that we provide resources to the people who are working for us every day.
Moving on to the topic of crime, let me share some sobering statistics. So far in 2026, 10 people have been killed and at least 24 have been injured in 28 shootings that have occurred in Tallahassee and Leon County. According to data collected by the Tallahassee Democrat, 9 of these shootings have happened in the last month. In 2021, the City Commission voted to allocate $1 million a year for 5 years to take on gun violence. Here is the question. Is it working? What needs to change? Jeremy Matlow will begin with you for 45 seconds.
I think where we started spending was a great first step. Obviously, we need to do a lot more. I think one shooting in our community is one shooting too many. One death is one death too many. And this is a problem we've grappled with for years. I think it's going to take more investment. I think it's going to take violence interrupter programs, really getting them onto the streets to interject into some of these situations. And we really have to look at our poverty rate. Are we doing enough to improve the economy for the people at the bottom? We continue to have the same poverty rate. We can expect our crime problem to resolve until we address that.
Thank you. Daryl.
I think it's not working. As a person who lives on the South Side and probably very close to the crime that you're talking about, I take it very personal. I think we have to change our strategy. Youth intervention becomes very important, and that youth intervention also comes with another issue. We have this poverty issue that's directly tied to the youth that are involved in this. But also, too, I think we have to do some things from a community policing standpoint to maybe teach some other intervention measures when people have conflicts. Because what we're seeing is some of the people who are involved in these things know each other. And so, obviously, we have to start teaching a better way to dealing with problems.
Lorraine Osley.
So I think that we need to make sure we continue supporting our law enforcement. They are, they're working hard and they're making sure that these communities are safe and vibrant. I agree we need to focus on community policing. I spend a lot of time with friends in the police force, and I know that the community, it builds trust between the communities and the police officers, and that's really important. We have a crime issue in this community. It's going down, but we still have it, and poverty is a huge part of that, and we have great issues going on in some of our neighborhoods, like the South City Foundation, really starting to address poverty at the start, and that's what we need to keep doing.
And finally, Michael Faust.
Yes, I believe that it is working because the statistics have been going down on the shootings, but we're at a point where we can't just throw more money at it. We have to go and do things in the community, specifically, as Daryl was talking about, where we can provide economic freedom for people so that they don't come into these conflicts. What's the number one thing couples fight about? Money. These economic freedom or economic security is the greatest freedom, and people don't want to damage each other when they're all successful.
Okay, Darrell Parks, a quick 30-second follow-up, beginning with you. Do you believe policing levels are sufficient right now? Why or why not?
Well, first, I think that they're doing a great job, our police department, and I'm very encouraged by, I'm a walker, and so I see a lot of the technology that TPD is using and the usefulness that it's representing to them. I think they're doing a great job. I certainly, though, am open-minded to hearing from the department what their needs are going forward. I recognize that they've had some reduction in manpower, and I would certainly want to know from them what does that mean that we need to do as a commission to be supportive. I believe it's very important that we collectively, the commission, support the department and follow
Thank
whatever
you.
their needs are. Thank you.
Lorraine Osley.
I think we need to do what our law enforcement tells us they need, because they are protecting our communities, and we need to make sure we're giving them what they need.
Thank you. Michael Faust, do you believe policing levels are sufficient right now?
I think they're fine. What we really need more is on the other side is citizen training on how to assert your rights, how to de-escalate, what's really something that you need to call 911 for. And then when you call 911, it shouldn't just be police officers showing up. We need mental health professionals, social workers to identify it so we can intervene early.
Thank you. And to finish us off, Jeremy Matlow.
I think when people call the police, they want to make sure they have a quick response. We look to the police chief to staff us appropriately and have provided the positions he deems necessary to respond to those calls.
Thank you.
All right, quick foray into immigration. The 287G agreement with ICE and TPD has been a lightning rod issue. If elected, would you vote to keep it or cancel it, even if it put your seat in jeopardy with the governor? 30 seconds. We're starting with you, Ms. Osley.
Immigration is a federal issue. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep illegal immigrants out of this country and out of our streets. But the 287G issue gives me a great deal of concern.
Okay. Mr. Faust.
Yeah, it's a lightning rod because people don't understand it. There's two parts to 287G. It's turning over people who have been arrested for violent crimes, and it's making raids on people who have been suspected of violent crimes. I'm not in favor of raids going door to door, finding people who haven't committed any crimes, who maybe just let their visas expired. I'm not in favor of that at all. But I would not get rid of the agreement. I'd seek to educate the public on how to understand what it is so that we can keep our communities safe from illegal immigration when people decide not to follow the rules.
Thank you. Mr. Mello.
Florida law doesn't require municipalities to enter into these agreements with ICE. Frankly, I don't think it's really in our budget to go do federal immigration enforcement. So I'm willing to repeal the agreement. We already have things in place for violent criminals when they end up in the jail system. This has nothing to do with that. This is making local law enforcement officers do the role of federal government, and I don't support that.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
I fully support our police department doing the things that they need to do to enforce the law. If that's what they need to do to enforce the law, then so be it.
All right.
Okay, changing topics here. Other counties, including almost all of Tallahassee's neighboring counties, are putting moratoriums or a ban on data centers. Tallahassee voted the idea down, saying it wasn't necessary. Do you support a moratorium? In 30 seconds, Michael Faust will begin with you.
No, I don't support a moratorium because there's probably things that we can't, there's land we can't control. But what I would do instead of building a brand new data center is use our existing ones to co-locate resources in those, and that we could then negotiate good contracts to keep our utility rates down. We could also make money off of these companies by putting their servers in our existing data centers.
Jeremy Matlow.
I supported the ban. I proposed the ban. Tallahassee doesn't have enough land to dedicate to a massive AI data center. It has negative impacts on our water quality as well as strain on our electrical grid. It doesn't make sense for a city like Tallahassee, and I think we need a proactive ban in place. Currently, any developer could come with a PUD request and move that forward to propose a data center. An outright ban by ordinance would require a totally different process of repealing a ban before one could ever be considered. That's an important distinction and one we need in Tallahassee.
Thank you. Darrell Parks.
I would not support the ban, mainly because I think when you get an issue like this, it's important to study the pros and cons of the proposed action. And as a mayor, I think our mayor needs to find every possible way to help our economy when they can. So studying it in detail would be something I would do, then make a decision as to what we do or not do.
Okay, and Loran Osley, finish us off.
Bottom line is, we are all using the data, and we need data centers, but I do not think they should be in Leon County.
Okay, thank you.
We'll turn now to the joys of campaigning. As they say, according to the most recent campaign finance records, Daryl Parks has raised $283,000, Loran Osley, $270,000, Jeremy Matlow, $168,000, and Michael Faust, $5,300. What should voters take away from your campaign funding and your opponents? It'll be a 30-second question. We'll start with you, Mr. Matlow.
Thank you. I mean, I think what you see is we have 3 well-funded candidates that are going to have campaigns that use paid media, right? But I think when we look at the difference, our campaign is supported by everyday people, small donors from all across our community. I think our campaign has actually broken the record for the amount of individual small dollar contributions ever to a local campaign. I think it shows the excitement for our campaign, the grassroots support. And look, we're not funded by big, large special interests that want to have influence over city government. Those folks have never supported me, and the same is true in this race.
And Mr. Parks.
Without question, as the only person who's never served in office, I think my donations represent a full career as an attorney, as a business person in this community, and they've shown that the people who gave to me respect the work that I've done as a person and as a leader. And so my strength in that I've done is that the city of Tallahassee, the citizens get to vote for a person that many people believe in, right? And a career of strength and leadership in what we need in our next mayor.
And you, Ms. Osley.
So I'm proud of the support that I have from all walks of life. I have Democrats, Republicans, business leaders, nonprofits, doctors, teachers, et cetera. The bottom line is they know about my experience. They have worked with me. They know my experience. Many of them have never, we don't agree on anything, but they know that my door is open and I listen to both sides and make the best decision for the people I represent. That's what I did for 14 years in the legislature, and that's what I will do as mayor.
And Mr. Faust.
Yes, so I just want to say 4,000 of that was my money that I put in for the qualifying fee. I didn't think it was prudent to start wasting taxpayer dollars before I even got elected into office. So that's why I refused to fundraise for my campaign. People inevitably want to donate, so that's where the other 1,600 came from, and I think you guys will be surprised with the upcoming campaign finance reports.
Okay, thanks to each of you. Next question, based on financial disclosure forms of Mr. Parks, Ms. Osley, and Mr. Matlow, this race has been described as a race of millionaires. What do you want voters to take away from your financial disclosures? And for that, we'll start with Mr. Parks.
Well, I think without question, I think it takes it out of context. This is not about how much money any of us have, right? Because I'm not trying to buy an election. I think what it says, though, is that we've lived a life that we had success in our lives. In no way, and for me, I've only given from myself and 2 entities that I own $3,000 into the campaign. So I think it's nothing should be taken from it, and that you have people who've had some success in life and have done some very prudent things within that. And so you can have confidence that you're looking at someone who's been successful.
And Ms. Osley.
I spent my life in public service working for this community. I have 14 years at the legislature, and I've done a lot of work in the private sector. I don't think it matters what our background is. It matters what we have done and what our experience says and what we will do as mayor.
And Mr. Faust.
Yeah, well, I looked at the net worth, and the people up on the stage, they're not the richest people in the world. They've been successful and they've done good. And they've done well and they've helped people and saved that money. Now, I'm not a millionaire, and I'm the only one on the stage. And does that mean that my ideas are less important? No, I don't think so. And I appreciate that the media has given me a chance to speak, despite my lack of the war chest. And I wanted to take money out of politics. I've heard that for 25 years, and this was the only way that I could do it.
And Mr. Matlow.
I think it's important to know what the financial disclosures are, but really I think we have to also look at where we started as individuals. I was raised in extreme poverty by a single mother of 4 kids. I left home at 16 and was able to build a successful company that now has over 5 locations, 120 employees, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of what I've been able to build in Tallahassee, and I look forward to using those skills to build up our city as a whole.
Thank you all.
All right, we're going to talk about 2 very important votes this sitting commission took. In one of the most important votes in decades, the city voted to sell its stake in the community hospital to FSU after a contentious process. We're setting the process aside for the moment. Do you agree with the vote, and what do you think it will mean for patients? 45 seconds, and we're starting with you, Ms. Osley.
So the process, we know that we're going to put that aside. Bottom line is, this is a great opportunity for this community to bring a world-class academic medical center to Tallahassee. It's going to bring doctors, better healthcare outcomes, research. It is exactly what we need. We need better healthcare, and we need high-paying jobs. And it was an opportunity to have specialized medical care. It's going to help us move to the next level that we need to do in this community.
As the vote arrived, you watched it not on the commission. How would you have voted?
I would have voted yes.
Thank you. Mr. Faust.
Yeah, I think ultimately it'll be a good thing. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid. FSU has access to federal funds, state funds, much more than the city can get. And it's also got the medical college, the medical school that can come over and teach. I've known people, when I first started my career with the state, who drove to Shands and they had to take off work to take their spouse to Shands. And I think it's going to supercharge our hospital and ultimately be a good thing for patients. So we should get behind it. And for that reason, now knowing more about it, I would have voted yes.
Thank you. Mr. Madlow.
I think it could be a good thing, but the public still doesn't know what the agreement is. We still don't have an agreement between TMH and FSU for the operation of the main hospital. And until those agreements are in place, we'll know nothing about what specialties we may be able to attract to Tallahassee or what expansion of healthcare we'll even see. So it was a rush process, but now that it is complete, I hope it improves healthcare tremendously in Tallahassee.
And Mr. Parks.
It's hard to talk about this subject without talking about the very troublesome process we all went through. I think
We're going to talk about that next.
Okay. Well, without question, I hope it leads to improved outcomes. I hope it leads to improved specialties within this community. I hope it certainly leads to better research in that regard. And as a person, I actually combine some of my healthcare locally and with the Mayo in Jacksonville. I hope that it would give folks here a higher level of overall medical service that some of us have to leave to get. So that's what I hope it.
And even with the process, how would you have voted?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Now we will talk the process briefly. During the process, many accused the city and FSU of engineering the hospital takeover behind closed doors and railroading TMH leaders. Was that an accurate assessment? 30 seconds, and we'll start with you, Mr. Faust.
Yeah, when I read the news about it, it said the hospital board was blindsided by the decision, so that would be accurate, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow.
Yes, it absolutely portrayed and seemed to be a hostile takeover. The city commission nor TMH were included in the conversations before it came about, and then the end result, the city ended up selling the hospital for pennies on the dollar without real strong guarantees for the future of indigent care in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Without question, the way it was handled certainly has decreased the trust that the community has in the commission and the process itself and the entities involved. And so the damage is real. And I think that the next mayor has to work very seriously to improve the public trust as a result of that process.
Mrs. Osley.
So I'm a big believer in TMH. My son was born there. I've spent time there myself. It's an amazing place. I have a lot of friends that serve on the board. They were blindsided. There's no question. But the bottom line is it's a done deal, and we're moving forward. And I'm sorry that it has happened this way, but I think it's a great thing for this community.
Thank you. Much of FSU's investment in community health care is contingent upon appropriations from the legislature. In a quick show of hands, who trusts lawmakers to follow through on that? I'm not seeing any hands. Let's shift over to the golf club. What is your opinion of the city commission's decision to sell the golf course to the Capital City Country Club, and how did or would you have voted? 30 seconds, and we will start with you, Mr. Faust.
I would have probably voted for it because we need some cash injection in the city, and we weren't actually using it versus the revenue it was bringing in. So the sale was actually a better deal for the city.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow.
I voted against it. This was 168 acres of publicly owned land valued at tens of millions of dollars, likely sold for just $1 million, just steps from the Capitol. That's an insanely low valuation. And then to turn out just after we sell it to hear that billionaires are involved with making it an exclusive golf course. That's not how we protect the public trust. We protect the public land, and we need to protect the financial resources of our city as well.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
First and foremost, I think the first issue I dealt with was the cemetery, and how we handled the cemetery would have been my first issue. Number two, the process was very questionable. The fact that you would have a second transaction after the commission voted that was not revealed is troublesome to me. So without question, the individuals involved in whatever back channels on this process, again, hurts the public trust that this community has. So now we have two whammies where we've had the public trust greatly tarnished as a result of some transactions.
Based on what came before the commission at the time, how would you have voted?
Yes.
Ms. Osley.
So I would have voted yes also, although I have the same concerns. The bottom line is I think we want to have green space and not strip malls or housing in that facility, where the green space is now. But the biggest concern to me, frankly, is the fact that we have known for 6 years about the burial ground, and we have not recognized or acknowledged that until now. And so that is one of the prime reasons I would have voted yes, because we finally are doing that.
Moving on to the topic of economic development, Jeremy Matlow, will begin with you. There seems to be a disconnect when assessing Tallahassee's economy right now, even between local officials and the State Chamber of Commerce, on whether we are gaining or losing jobs. What's working and what isn't in our local economy? 45 seconds.
I think most accurately, we're probably just treading water. I think our economy is pretty stagnant. We're not seeing large changes in growth or economic development, but we're not falling apart either. I think what's not working are some of the large giveaways we've seen at OEV. You look at the $27 million to the stadium, funding distilleries, these types of things that don't build long-term industry and jobs, I think we need to get away from, and then look at what actually does work. Reforming the permitting process, making it easier to do business in Tallahassee, having a culture in Tallahassee that welcomes new businesses and doesn't have a set group of insiders it likes to work with. I think we start making those types of changes, then we really open up Tallahassee for business.
Thank you. Darrell Parks.
A few things. First of all, I would start with the building and permitting process that we have in this city needs a lot of work. Number two, helping the existing business that are here would be a priority of mine. But then I think even probably just as important is our action going forward, how we recruit new businesses to come to this area and trying to make sure that we find new businesses who may be interested in logistics, light manufacturing, and things that could bring more jobs here to really change this economy. But lastly, I would say that finding a way to work with our universities, FSU, FAMU, TSC, and state government to find ways to greatly improve opportunities for our workforce.
Thank you. Lorraine Osley.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, there's a disconnect between assessing our economy right now, what is working and what isn't.
Okay. The bottom line is that we are not growing. The state of Florida is growing exponentially. The city of Tallahassee is not. And we need to figure out why. I think it's because we don't have high-paying jobs. We have students, our children that leave here. We have students that need to go somewhere else. We need to have high-paying jobs here, and we need to bring together, this is what my history is, bringing together people around a table to figure out what the common goal is. To me, FSU, FAMU, TSC, our chambers, we need to sit at the table and figure out what what the goal is. How do we attract the type of high-end jobs that we need here?
Thank you. Michael Faust, same to you.
Yeah, what is working here is that we have the brain power and the grit and the determination in this town to really jumpstart the economy and get going again. The things that aren't working, and this is where I'm going to say it's not a race between millionaires. We are falling apart, and I'm the only one that can say that because I've been through these struggles recently, and that's not a diss to them being successful, but these are fresh in my mind. And so what I would do is have the city have business mentorship programs. We have a ton of entrepreneurs here who are succeeding without loans. We could do microloans, bridge loans to connect private capital, where the city backs the initial investment so that people can come with a business plan, no credit check, no criminal check. Just show me your business plan. Let's get to work.
Thank you. And a question from a reader as a follow-up. What is your plan for creating high-income jobs in Tallahassee that are not tied to state or local government or the universities? Darrell Parks, will begin with you for 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think the best example is at our airport. We have an airport that certainly has 600 acres that we could use to develop around. There are things that we could do within the new free trade zone that we have with the new customs center that's about to open. So there are some possibilities that we can do, but I think first it's going to take a commission and a mayor that come together with a vision, along with working with the county to find a way to work together to move forward. Right now, we have a situation where they are not communicating the way it should to work together.
Thank you. Lorraine Osley.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before. I think bringing to the table FSU, FAMU, the chambers, and the state, even the state government is really important part of this, helping us figure out how to use the Mag Lab, how to use FSU and FAMU, and how to make sure we're bringing the high-paying jobs that's going to grow this community, grow our economy, and move us to the next level.
Okay, Michael Faust.
Yeah, since you mentioned not having the government involved with that, I do want to say one thing. We need the government to promote. We don't have to have them pick winners and losers, but they need to give a platform for the common people. And so to create high-paying jobs here, we need tech entrepreneurs to invest here and do remote work for other agencies, other states. We need to keep our revenue within Florida, like I talked about with our gig economy revitalization. We can do that privately. We can do it with the government. I got a new website called Tallahassee.rocks, and look for that.
Jeremy Matlow, 30 seconds.
It's going to take a huge culture change at the top end of the city in Tallahassee. We can't continue to be a city that works with insiders and not outsiders. We need to be open to all types of companies coming to town. And we do need to address when companies try to do business in Tallahassee, we continue to be told we're the most difficult city to open a new business. And sometimes they don't even open. They just go elsewhere. As a small business owner, I'll be a mayor that can sit down with companies that want to come to Tallahassee, understand their bottom line, and help them navigate our process, but also see where we're failing so we can start being open for everyone.
Thank you. Lorraine Osley, will begin with you on this follow-up. Do you support the current slate of blueprint projects, including the FSU and Northeast Gateway projects? Why or why not in 30 seconds, please?
I have to admit, I have not looked at the whole slate of blueprint projects, but I think the blueprint is a this community has decided that we want to tax ourselves to make sure we have the infrastructure that we need to become the city that we need. So I am a supporter of Blueprint, and I don't know the details about that particular project.
Okay, thank you. Michael Faust.
Yeah, the Northeast Side project, I put that on hold right away. I think that the Northeast Side has had way too much attention. The South Side needs to get potholes fixed. We need to get the roads smoothed out. Old Bainbridge has been closed on and off, and it's still pretty messed up when we drive down it. And that doesn't mean that the North Side's going to get neglected. It just means that we need to shift priorities and do things wholeheartedly, one at a time, so that we get things done and we get things done right. So the blueprint is a sales tax, yes, within our community that's supposed to improve our community, and it should improve it equally.
Thank you. Jeremy Matlow.
We need to shut down the airport gateway project. This project's ballooned to nearly $200 million to make luxury roadways to the airport where we already have roadways that take us to the airport. That doesn't make sense to me when other projects like Tharp Street have children walking on dirt trails to school. This is a severe imbalance in how we're investing in public infrastructure. We need to prioritize the upkeeps of the neighborhoods that already exist here, places like Jake Gaither that continue to have flooding issues, and communities all across our city that don't even have basic sidewalks. So my priority would be shutting down that project and investing in neighborhoods.
Thank you. Darrell Parks, what say you?
And this is a good contrast because I think I differ greatly from Commissioner Matlow in that I think jobs should be the next mayor's top priority. And I think projects like the Airport Gateway and Walani present an opportunity for many jobs and many people to go to work. And so I would be totally in support of that. Number two, though, I think another part of the blueprint allocation involves the city portion, though, to the extent that I could work with the new commission that they may present dollars available from a blueprint standpoint that we can use for that purpose to help this economy. That's what I plan to do.
Okay, and our final economic development question, what can you do as a commissioner to make our airport more competitive and bring in carriers and bring down ticket prices? Michael Faust, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I grew up with three sisters, and it got me thinking, we don't have a sister city in Tallahassee, and we could have more. So we could encourage people to travel and come here, encourage our own residents to go to that other city. We could have an international sister city. We could have a national sister city. We could have one within Florida. And this is cross-promotion, city diplomacy. It's something that I'm good at, something that I would be good at in the mayor's office. That's why I'm seeking this one specifically. We need a good face of the public of Tallahassee in there, and we need someone who's willing to talk to anyone.
Jeremy Matlow.
The single greatest thing we can do long term is make a city that more people want to visit, more people want to travel to. I think we've done a lot with incentives over the years. We currently just brought Breeze Airways to Tallahassee that added a few more direct flights. So I think those things are good and they help get us to some destinations. But long term, this has been a problem that this community has faced for decades. I understand traveling to Jacksonville if your whole family's traveling because it's just that much cheaper, and sometimes it's even quicker. That's an issue, and I think as we grow our city, as we become a destination for arts and culture, we'll see more travel.
Thank you. Darrell Parks, same question.
Few things. One, I don't think I'd be in support of trying to attract discount airlines here. I don't think it's a good solution. Number two, in trying to encourage more people to fly to our airport, whatever we could do to encourage more people to fly, I think would have a direct effect on people flying, on the price of tickets out of our airport. Number three, I would take a hard look at the airport's overall budget and to see if there's some savings there that we could do that might lower some of the impact of things that we're doing there. Also, I would also look at, to the extent we could affect the landing fees that we're charging airlines and maybe make that an incentive for them as well.
Thank you. And to finish us off, Lorraine Osley.
Okay, not a question, not an answer that most people like, but the mayor and the commission can't really do much about airline prices or carriers. And the bottom line is we need to have economic growth, we need to have job growth, we need to have growth to have the type of airport that we need to have in this community and should.
Thank you.
And we're shifting gears now to the issue of decorum and divide. What has caused the intractable 3-2 divide on the City Commission, and what will break it? And let's start with you, Commissioner Matlow.
I think some of these conversations are overblown. I think when you look at our voting records, 93% of the time the City Commission votes together. When we differ, it's because the majority is raising taxes, selling public land to billionaires, or doing something that's destructive to our environment. So we do have policy disagreements, and I think that's fine, and it's up to the voters to decide what policies they want to see move forward in Tallahassee.
Mr. Parks.
I have to respectfully disagree with Commissioner Matlow on that. I think it's so important that as a commission that we always sit, talk, and listen to each other, that we be respectful to both other commissioners and employees and their families, but also that we never leave the discussion, that we always stay on the dais and make sure that we hear each other out and respect each other. So I think civility becomes a big part of it.
Ms. Osley.
So the bottom line is we don't need to have 5 commissioners that agree. We just have to have 5 commissioners that can get along and that can build bridges, and figure out how to get things done. That is what this community needs. It's what I have done. I have worked with both sides of the aisle, a Democrat and a very Republican legislature for 14 years, and I got things done for this community because I worked with people I disagreed with. That's what we need to do in the mayor's office and the commission as well.
Mr. Faust.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes. What has caused the intractable 3-2 divide on the city commission, and what will break it?
What has caused that is political infighting. We pretend that this is a nonpartisan race, but the only thing that's going to end that is a liberal Republican like me who steps in office.
All right, moving on. What letter grade would you give our current mayor for his tenure? And this is 15 seconds to answer. And we'll begin with you, Mr. Parks.
I wouldn't put a grade on it, but I think that he's done a fairly good job. But there are also areas that we all need to work on. Without question, the crime issue that we have in our community is probably first and foremost. And people tell me all the time they want to see us address that. And so that would be what I would say on that.
And what would be the grade? Can you give us a grade?
No
What
grade.
does that look like? Okay. Ms. Osley.
Okay, I'm not going to give a grade either, but I agree. I think there are people in this community that are feel very left out and feel very unheard by the current mayor. But there are some amazing things that have happened in this community while he's been mayor as well.
Okay.
Mr. Faust.
D's to get degrees, but I'd probably give him a B+. He's been there, solid. I'd take away points for not being more public-facing, but he's been very public-facing within Tallahassee. I think he's overall been a good mayor. It's a very tough job to do, so I respect that.
And Mr. Matlow.
Probably not a surprise, but I give him an F. Just because you look at the track record, our city's not going in the right direction. We've seen mismanagement from everything from basic functions like the HUD grant or to the way he even treats elected officials like Commissioner Porter, not responding to our emails or addressing our issues. That's not the way to lead our city.
And we'll move on to our next question. How will you wield the gavel differently at city commission meetings than the current mayor? That's 30 seconds on the clock, Ms. Osley.
I think, number one, we need to go back to the historical tradition of having every commissioner be able to serve as mayor pro tem. And I would like to see Jack Porter be able to serve as the mayor pro tem, since that has been denied from her. My mayorship is about getting along, bringing everyone to the table to solve problems and get things done. And that's what I will do as mayor.
Mr. Faust.
Yeah, using the gavel, I would make sure that everybody's heard without getting too disorderly. We all want to go home on time. The city commissions aren't the most exciting events to attend. And I bring the type of calmness and serenity to people that would otherwise feel unheard, like the Consolidated Dispatch Agency, people that can't afford to donate to me but want to support, people that aren't at the big events that everyone's going to get votes. I'm going to the small events. I'm talking to people. The Consolidated Dispatch Agency wants high-risk retirement, and it's been on the agenda over and over again and keeps getting pushed back.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow.
I would maintain order and decorum amongst the collegial body, use wide adopted rules of orders like Robert's Rules of Order, and make sure everybody has an opportunity to express themselves and debate the issues with the time that they need. I'd also be more responsive to the public. They sometimes get rowdy, so to speak, but we have an obligation to hear from the public, and I would let everybody speak who wants to address the commission.
And Mr. Parks.
Without question, I think as the next mayor, collegiality is first and foremost. I think working with the people that I'm serving with would become super important to me, because all of them bring a different perspective to the job and experience. Number two, listening to the public, listening to the people of Tallahassee, their concerns, whether it's in chambers or outside of chambers, becomes super important. We are a very diverse community. And there are a lot of people who bring so many different experiences that we should take advantage of. I plan on being that mayor for all of Tallahassee.
Thank you. And our final question, the city recently created a 30-minute time limit for unagended speakers. Do you agree with that? And if so, why or why not? And we'll start with you, Mr. Faust.
That's what I would do to that. We could have handled that a lot better. We could have elected a speaker for that group. They seem to be all on the same page. the group that caused that rule change. And the important thing is that people feel heard without wasting everybody's time. And I'm good at doing that. I know Daryl would be good at that. I know that Lorraine would be good at that as attorneys. It teaches you how to reel people in when they're getting emotional. And I'm the same way. I've worked with attorneys, I've worked with law enforcement, I've worked with HR, IT, touches a little bit of everything. So I would make sure that everyone feels heard, and I'd have a portal that every neighborhood could vote their ideas on the city commission issues, so that if they can't attend the meetings, they'd be able to still feel heard.
Mr. Matlow.
I disagree. I would make sure everybody had a chance to speak, even if we have to stay there till 2 in the morning. I think that's the duty of our elected officials. The City Commission has cut the number of meetings they have in half, so we only meet once a month now. So that only gives 6 hours total in a year to hear from the public. It's just not enough time.
And Mr. Parks.
I've probably spent my whole life as a very outspoken person in this community, probably since the 90s when I was a student leader here. I would not limit what students could do, but also think that commissioners who have supporters who they know to be out of line should speak out to that.
And Ms. Osley.
I would not limit debate. I spent all of my life in the legislature listening to folks, and sometimes that's the only time they get to be heard. It's really important to listen. I hope that they can have other ways other than coming to public meetings, but we should not limit their opportunity to speak at those.
Thank you so much.
And I've got a couple more individual questions on this 3-2 divide, and also kind of the factions Tallahassee has found itself in. One of the most common questions we're hearing from voters is, which side are they on? So I've got a few questions in that regard. Mr. Matlow, Mayor Daley says you are the reason for the toxic culture at City Hall, and I believe he's gavelled out before you could respond. What's your response to that? 30 seconds.
I think most people aren't too concerned about infighting or feuds that are happening on the city commission. They're really concerned about the issues of affordability in our community, stagnant economy, whether we're protecting our environment and tree canopy. Those are the things I go to city commission meetings to fight for, and I will continue to do that. Obviously, no one likes to be gavelled out in the middle of a conversation and not be able to have a conversation. When I'm mayor, again, we'll let everybody speak and we'll have civil conversations as intended.
For the others, Mr. Parks, is anyone specifically to blame for the divide? 15 seconds.
No, but I think the mayor needs to focus on trying to make our economy better and make that the number one issue. And everything else is a sideshow.
Thank
I'll
you.
focus on the economy.
Ms. Osley.
I believe both Matlow and Daley are to blame for where they are right now.
Thank you. Mr. Faust.
Blame for the 3-2 is what you're asking?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's on Matlow.
Okay. Mr. Parks, what's one vote where your vote would have changed the 3-2 divide? 15 seconds.
I really never thought about that.
Okay.
I think that as a person, I like Commissioner Matlow and I like Commissioner Porter, so I think I'll be able to work. There'll be no factions for me. I'll vote based on what the citizens have told me to represent their concerns.
Okay. Ms. Osley, same question.
I agree with that. I think that what we're looking for the future, and the future is moving towards a commission where 5-0 votes are normal.
Okay. Mr. Faust?
I would have voted for the fireworks permit store to be allowed to open because it was treating us like children who couldn't afford or who couldn't be trusted not to set off fireworks late at night or set off fireworks within the city limits. And then typical.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Matlow, is there a vote you'd reconsider in hindsight, changing to 4-1?
On a 3-2 vote, I'm comfortable with the votes that I've taken.
Okay. Mr. Parks, Curtis Richardson and Diane Williams-Cox both attended your campaign kickoff and donated to your campaign. Will you seek their endorsement? How about Mayor Daley? 15 seconds.
Mayor Daley is a friend also, and certainly we're friends since we were students, so that is what it is.
Will you seek their formal endorsement?
For sure, yes.
Okay. Ms. Osley, same question.
They didn't attend my campaign.
I think Diane Williams-Cox, however, has donated to your
The
campaign.
bottom line is I have a lot of friends in all races, and I've spoken to all of them, and I think we should stay out of each other's races because I think that is part of what has led to the 3-2. I think it's important that we run these races on our own and not, yeah.
Mr. Faust, are you seeking any endorsements? You recently switched to the Republican Party publicly. Are you hoping for an endorsement on that front? 15 seconds.
No, I don't need an endorsement from any party or any organization or any group. I am running for the people, and I represent the people.
Okay. Mr. Matlow, last question. You've been on the losing side of 3-2 votes for a while. What pivotal 3-2 votes for a while? What quick 3 issues will you revisit or take up if you become a mayor with a majority? 30 seconds.
Sure. I think we'd look at rolling back our tax rate to really get our financial house in order. We can't revisit some of the issues like the hospital or the golf course, but I think those would be the types of decisions we wouldn't make in the future. I think looking at a potential Lake Jackson annexation, that's something we're going to have to look at and make sure the city isn't going into debt to expand into that area.
Okay, I'm setting the league up for the next question here with a show of hands. Who supports the city manager being installed by the current commission? I'm not seeing any hands.
Is that?
Oh, a kind of hand.
Well, they're going to do it anyway, so
Okay.
I consider that moot.
All
It's
right.
not wise.
All right, well, in follow-up to that then, Darrell Parks, will begin with you on this question. What's your advice to any city manager candidate listening to this candidate forum? 30 seconds.
I think that anyone considering this job should wait and advise the recruiter that they would rather to see and hear from whoever's going to be the commissioner they're serving from and the next mayor they're serving from. And it would not be prudent to take this job without having that group of people chime in.
Thank you. Loran Osley.
That sounds like good advice, but the bottom, I think I'm not in a position to be able to know what's the right thing to tell a manager. The city manager is a really important job. There's a lot of things that happen in the city of Tallahassee, so I think I'm not in the position to do that.
Michael Faust, any advice?
Yeah, they're essentially our operations, our COO. So I would give the advice to go ahead and apply, get started, and the next commission is going to be working with you to help the city really take off.
Thank you. Jeremy Matlow.
I wouldn't advise anybody to apply for a job if they could have 3 new bosses a month later. It doesn't make any sense.
Thank you.
We're moving on to issues of affordable housing. Tallahassee housing costs and rents have surged in the last 5 years. What is one policy change that you would make to assist owners or renters in the capital city? 30 seconds for this answer. Ms. Osley, we'll start with you.
So I'm really proud of the work that I've done in affordable housing with the Purpose-Built Communities and South City Foundation. If you drive down Orange Avenue and look at Columbia Gardens, that was public housing that is now mixed income housing as part of the South City Foundation. Those are the types of things that I would like to see this city continue, and that's what I would do.
And Mr. Faust.
Yeah, I would encourage more home ownership. Even students who are here for 4 years sometimes end up staying longer. And we've gotten so far away from that that, when you buy a home, you lock in the rent for 30 years. So we need to encourage more people to lay down roots here. And the other part about renting, can you repeat that?
Policy change you would make to assist owners or renters.
Yeah, so policy change, I would have a mediation for renters and tenants because you only have 2 or 3 days to pay your rent. But when you're a homeowner, you have 15 days.
Mr. Matlow.
I believe we need to prioritize housing as part of our city budget, really jumpstart the development of low-income rental housing. I believe if we're prudent, we could build 500 new units in the first 4 years and really start building housing for the people who are struggling the most in our community.
Mr. Parks.
My focus would be more on ownership than renting, in that I think we can improve our building permitting process to help some of the existing homeowners. And number 2, I think we have some very unique opportunities in some of our older neighborhoods like Bond and Griffin Heights to help those folks who own land there find a way to go ahead and build on those lots that they have in those areas.
Our next question, nearly a quarter of Tallahassee residents live in poverty, and many of them face food insecurity. What is the most realistic way the city can reduce those numbers in the next 5 years? Mr. Faust, we'll start with you. Answers 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds? I'm glad you asked. So my whole plan to revitalize our Star Metro system would address food deserts, poverty cycles, people getting to jobs on time, 24/7 transportation. I want to take Star Metro and completely redo it with city-branded vans and have a rideshare system that's facilitated by the city so neighbors drive neighbors and neighbors keep all the money that they earn for their jobs.
Mr. Matlow.
Higher paying jobs in both the public and the private sector. We need to be getting the jobs that rise people out of poverty, and we need to be looking at jumpstarting our small business economy that's ran by locals. That really is an entry for people struggling the most.
Mr. Parks.
After helping the existing businesses who are here, I think the next mayor needs to be zero focused on trying to revitalize and bring new industries to Tallahassee in a serious way and make it a top priority to work with the current commission, the county, and the entities that we have to support us in that regard.
And Ms. Osley.
There's not a silver bullet to reduce poverty, but I'm really proud of the work that actually both Daryl and I have done with the South City Foundation, which is focused on neighborhood place-based revitalization, focused on career to college education, health care, making sure that mixed income housing is a reality. And it has the residents involved in reinventing their neighborhoods. Neighborhood by neighborhood, we should be doing that because that impacts poverty.
And one more follow-up question. There are often complaints about the proliferation of storage warehouses, mattress stores, chicken shops, car washes, and pot shops. Is it the role of a mayor to steer types of retail growth? And if so, how would you do that? Mr. Matlow, we'll start with you for 30 seconds.
Yeah, this is part of our land use and comprehensive planning strategy, and we need to make real changes to our code. I think it's unacceptable to be building storage units directly in people's backyards along Thomasville Road, particularly an area that was deemed a canopy preservation area. So we have seen development kind of run wild, get out of control. We need to reel it back in. We need to make room for businesses, but there's a right place for the right types, and right now we're kind of letting things go wherever they want.
Mr. Parks.
My answer is a little different in that I think that being a city that needs a different type of vision, a mayor who steers to help certain projects is certainly okay. For example, I think the things that we've seen that have happened in Gaines, Cascades, and could happen on Monroe Street needs even more energy. I think that a possible vision, for example, would be Monroe Street South Side. I think there's a lot of opportunity that we could do between Cascades Park and Magnolia within that Monroe region corridor. So that's a type of idea that I think a good mayor could do.
And Ms. Osley.
So I think we need to be more focused on bringing high-paying jobs than mattress stores and car washes. Those are going to happen. We should look at the comp plan to make sure that they're done appropriately, but let's get focused on the things that really matter.
And Mr. Faust.
Can you repeat the whole list again one more time?
There are often complaints about a proliferation of storage warehouses, mattress stores, chicken shops, car washes, and marijuana stores. Is it the role of a mayor to steer types of retail growth? And if so, how would you do it?
Yeah, the mayor's role should be to steer what the market wants. And I haven't heard anybody complain about chicken shacks or pot shops for that matter, but the storage units and mattress stores, certainly. So what I would do to direct that is going out into the neighborhood and talking to people saying, do we have a food desert here? Let's start a grocery store. Who's good at that? I want to go have forums every single day. This is a full-time job to me. It's not a side gig. So I want to get out there and steer things in a positive direction for our residents.
Thank you.
All right, we got a quick lightning round. These are fast-paced questions, yes or no, one-sentence answer types. The first being, how will you vote in a straw poll on whether the city and county should explore consolidation and why? Ms. Osley.
So this has been tried 3 times in our community, and it's failed. I'm glad it's going to be on the ballot, and we will see if the.
And how will you vote on it?
I would vote no right now.
Okay, Mr. Faust.
I'd vote yes. It's been tried 3 times and failed, but we can do it correctly.
Okay.
Success is trying and trying again.
Mr. Matlow.
I'm no. I think we need more cooperation, not consolidation.
Okay, Mr. Parks.
No, and I think we can continue to work together on services where we can work together, both city and county.
Okay, thank you. For those of you who voted no or said no on that, if the voters vote yes, would you commit to bringing it forward as a actual ballot item?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Mr. Faust?
I said yes.
Mr. Matlow?
If the voters vote yes, yes.
Mr. Parks?
From a straw poll,
Will you take the straw poll to a binding poll in the future?
I'll examine the straw poll and for legitimacy. And if I think it's legitimate enough, then yes, I would.
Okay. Thank you. This is a question from a viewer. If you received the $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, how would you use it and why? Mr. Faust, 1 sentence.
I would give artists a year off and let them create whatever the heck they want to create for us.
Okay. Mr. Matlow.
I'd use it for rent relief for people facing evictions.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Youth intervention,
Okay. Ms. Housley.
I would use it for home visiting for new moms.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow, Tallahassee School, well, actually, let's do a show of hands. Tallahassee school zone speed cameras have issued more than 50,000 tickets and generated close to $5 million in fines so far. Show of hands, who supports the program as it is now? All right, explain, 1 sentence.
If it's keeping our kids safe, it's okay.
Thank you. Mr. Faust, what would you change in 1 sentence?
I've been on the news about this already. I would get rid of them and put a unmanned police car in place of it. It's much
Okay.
cheaper and just as effective.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow.
They shouldn't be operating when the lights aren't flashing in the middle of the school day, and we should redesign the roadways to slow traffic intentionally.
Okay, Mr. Parks.
without question, I want to know a lot more details of the underlying details about this program, but the hours are a problem too.
All right. Mr. Parks, who has been the most effective local leader in Tallahassee or Leon County in the last 20 years?
Wow. I'd say Al Lawson.
Thank you. Ms. Osley.
Well, I would like to say myself, but no, I think Lawson served more time than I did. If we're talking 20 years, we can't go back to Democratic governors, right? Because I would say Lawton Childs and Bob Graham and
Okay.
others, but Al Lawson.
Thank you. Mr. Faust.
Bob O'Leary.
Okay. Mr. Madeline.
Debbie Lightsey.
All right. Last question from a viewer. Where are 2 of your favorite places to spend time in Tallahassee? And we will start with you, Lorraine Osley.
Cascades Park, because I was part of bringing it, and I'm very excited about that, and our running trails.
Thank you. Mr. Faust.
I love Tom Brown Park. Did you say 2 or 1?
2.
2. Tom Brown Park and probably the North Side Park, the library over on Fred George.
Mr. Matlow.
I'd say Lake Ella with my wife and Waverly Park with my kids.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Cascade Park and our football stadium near football season.
Okay. Back to normal time lengths here. Go to the league.
Jumping off on all those wonderful parks that you mentioned, let's shift our attention to the environment. What is the biggest environmental issue facing Tallahassee right now, and how can the commission help solve it? Michael Faust, we'll begin with you. 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think we're actually a little over-environmentally sound here. The fact that we have NIMBYs not in my backyards who stifle economic growth before we even have a discussion about something. Now, that thing about the data centers, it's a yes or no question that's asked. It's not a yes or no question. So to protect the environment, we just have to trust in expertise. We have to trust in scientists and bring those people to the table when we're making decisions, and also bring the environmentalists and also bring the business leaders so that we can make it work for everyone. It's not an either or.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Matlow.
What we have the most direct impact on, I think, is urban sprawl that's destroying our tree canopy in our lakes and streams. Those are policy decisions that we can change. We can still grow effectively while protecting what we love about our city.
Thank you. Darryl Parks.
We have a huge problem with the ponds and lakes here. Right after the storm yesterday, over the weekend, the amount of trash that was over off of Creek Road was crazy. So how we manage these ponds and that we have within the inner city is a huge issue that we have to address that the commission does have some say so over.
Okay, Lorraine Osley.
So what makes us all love this community is our canopy roads and our water source. To me, making sure that we're protecting our water quality and protecting our tree canopy, most important things.
All right, in this quick 30-second follow-up, Jeremy Matlow will begin with you. A pending proposal to potentially annex land owned by Jeffrey Phipps near Lake Jackson has sparked debate regarding infrastructure strain and environmental protection. Do you support the annexation? Why or why not?
I don't. This land's not in our urban services area. It has not been contemplated in our long-term planning for new growth. We've already outlined over 4,000 acres in Wilani to provide for growth for the next 30 years. This is textbook urban sprawl that's going to take spending away from our core of our city to fund a separate landowner.
Okay, Darrell Parks.
I think generally speaking, as a community, we need to grow, so I support the project. But I do think we have to make sure that we study the effects it has on our neighbors and what effects it may have on our environment. But generally speaking, I'm in support. I think it's important that Tallahassee continues to move forward and has a mayor who generally supports that concept.
Thank you. Lorraine Osley.
So we're just talking about the annexation, which I don't have a problem with. Once we move to the next step of that, the protection of the water and canopy roads is vital.
Okay, and finally, Michael Faust.
Yeah, I'd like to annex the whole county, so that's kind of moot to me. I think we need to do economic growth, and we can do it very smartly if we bring people to the table, and instead of having these knee-jerk reactions where we say yes or no, I'm against that, I'm against that. Why do we want to annex that land? What's the purpose? Are there customers out there? Are there facilities that we can use? So let's explore that. I'd table it as a commissioner until we had more information, but I'm not opposed to growth.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask you about fire fees now. After a fight over the fire service fee, the city of Tallahassee voted to sever its firefighting service contract with the county. Question is there any way out of this short of the county setting up its own fire department? And will that be beneficial to taxpayers and residents? 45 seconds on this question. Mr. Parks, we'll start with you.
I'd be a proponent of getting back to the table to try to resolve the issue with the county.
Ms. Osley.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs that we are even here. Some people are talking about consolidation, and we're talking about splitting up the fire service, which I think is, there are some issues with the costs, and they need to be addressed. But the bottom line is we should get back to the table to get the Tallahassee Fire Department continuing to serve the entire county, which they do a great job at.
Mr. Faust.
Yeah, I'd have the fire department have more full-time, well-paid firefighters, but also encourage volunteer fighter brigades. And I'd also examine the rules about firefighters showing up to every single accident, wasting money, wasting fuel. There's a lot of stupid things that the government does that I'm not afraid to get in and cut.
Mr. Matlow.
So this is one of those 3-2 votes we hear a lot about. I do think after this election, cooler heads will emerge. We'll be able to sit back down with the county and make sure we're covering everybody under the Tallahassee Fire Department.
And our next question deals with road safety. According to the state's crash dashboard, in 2026, Leon County has seen 122 crashes that involve pedestrians. 3 of those were fatal. What can you do as a commissioner to prevent those numbers from rising? We'll have 30 seconds to answer this, and Ms. Osley, will start with you.
So most people know that my son is visually impaired, and he was hit by a car several years ago and a pedestrian on his way home from school. So I get it. It's a very serious issue. And the city needs to work with this. Many of these are state roads. We've got to work with that. We've got to look at the traffic counts, and we need to put speed bumps. We need to do everything we can to protect our pedestrians.
Mr. Faust.
Yeah, so we have some constraints on sidewalk buildings because of the canopy roads. This ties back into my idea to do a rideshare service so we could have people accessible rides to get around. Can you repeat the first 2 parts about the accidents? What were those caused by?
There were
Pedestrian?
122 crashes that involved a pedestrian. so
Oh,
it
that
didn't
involved a
attribute the
pedestrian.
cause.
Yeah, and actually getting rid of all those speeding cameras and signs on the road, they're confusing. It's too much to look at. There's too much bright flashing light. If I'm going 1 mile per hour over 30, it beeps at me. And, who thought that was a good idea?
Mr. Matlow?
There's more we can do. I serve on the Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency, and we actually review pedestrian fatalities every year, every single one of them, to try to look for what we can change or what we can do better. I would say the big picture is we need to spend a lot more money on pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure in our community, particularly when we see new development, when we're adding, thousands of students on roads like Tennessee Street or Pensacola. That creates a danger, and we need to make sure we have pedestrian infrastructure to address it.
And Mr. Parks?
I think we have a lot of work to do. Certainly continued walkway improvements, especially where they cross over the roadway, is important. But we also have another issue with these motorized bicycles, for lack of a better word, as they ride along some of our sidewalks and walkways. Those folks who have an assisted motorized something built on the bicycle pose a special threat to pedestrians who are walking on our sidewalks. So that's something that I know the current commission may or may not have taken up yet, but it's a very aware problem right now.
Thank you all.
Y'all made it. It is closing time, which means it's closing remarks. Your chance to speak directly to voters, share your website. The floor is yours. We'll start with you, Mr. Faust. You have 1 minute.
Well, as your mayor, I would champion every single person in this city. I've had people sign my ballot petitions that were ex-felons, that didn't live in the city limits, and it just, on the campaign trail, I've learned that City Hall needs to be accessible to the people. It's currently not. I would make it so. Second, public safety is non-negotiable. We have to protect our police, our firefighters, and the services that they provide, and then also do it more intelligently. Third, every community in this city matters. When we see development on the north side or places that don't really need it right now, all we have to do is change our priorities until we bring the other neighborhoods up to equity so that people aren't tripping on potholes, people can get to the grocery store, people can live. And anyway, I will champion every single person in this city. I want to see economic growth, and I want to see it smart and respecting our environment.
Thank you. Mr. Matlow.
Thank you. Tallahassee City Commissioner Jeremy Matlow, excited to be running for mayor this year. I think we have a real opportunity to turn the page in our city, to focus on things like affordable housing and childcare that matter to people, to make sure we're growing responsibly and smartly, to make sure we're protecting our tree canopy, and we're serving everyday people. We can move the page, turn the page, get past the backroom deals and the types of soft corruption that we've seen for decades in our city, and really focus on making Tallahassee a better city for all of us. Hope to earn your support. Go to jeremymatlow.com to learn more.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you. I'm not a politician. I'm a problem solver. I spent my whole life as an attorney, solving problems and serving people. Tallahassee needs a new type of mayor. We don't need the status quo. We don't need people who've been there and didn't get the job done before. We need somebody that takes us in a different direction. We need a mayor who understands that this city is stagnant. And if we don't elect a person who has a different type of vision, who understands all parts of Tallahassee, from Bond to Killearn, who can bring these folks together, who has extensive experience in business, and who has been successful and understands why everyone matters, I'll be that type of mayor who can do just that. Go to darylformayor.com to support me, darylformayor.com. I'd love to have your support. Thank you.
Ms. Osley, close this out.
Thank you so much. As most people know, I was less than 2 years ago, I was in a very serious bike accident, and I almost lost my life. And it gave me a new perspective on life. I'm very grateful to be here, and very grateful to have the opportunity to run for mayor in the place that I love. We have an incredible community. We're the capital of the third largest state in the country, but we're very different from the rest of Florida. And we We've got so many great things going on with our universities, our Mag Lab, the natural beauty that we have. What we need is a mayor that knows how to bring people together, solve problems, and get things done. That is what I have done my entire life, and that is what I will do as the mayor of Tallahassee. I would appreciate your support. My website is www.ausleyformayor.com. Thank you so much.
And I wanted to sincerely thank each of our candidates this afternoon for joining us and answering our questions so thoroughly and candidly. Thanks, of course, to our audience as well for joining the Capital Region News Collaborative and the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee for this program. You can find a replay of this forum and others on your partners' YouTube pages and websites. The recorded broadcast is going to be July 22nd at 11 a.m. on WFSU, which is 88.9, so share it with your friends. This was actually our final forum for the primary races, but the Capital Region News Collaborative and the League of Women Voters here in Tallahassee are going to be back in the fall with forums for the general election. So you can keep up to date with all of that. Here's the collaborative website, cfnf.org/CRNC. Thank you again to our candidates and to our audience.
And remember, to cast your ballot in these races, you must be a registered voter. The voter registration deadline for the primary is July 20th. Early voting begins August 8th and ends on the 16th. Primary election day takes place on August 18th. Many of our listeners also have candidate signs in their yard. Once the elections are done, there will be 2 windows to recycle candidate signs. The first is from August 19th and runs to September 18th, and there will be another after the general election in November. Just bring your signs to the specially marked dumpsters at the locations on your screen to keep these used signs out of our local landfills.
And while you've heard from these candidates today, you may hear from them again if there's a runoff. If you have questions for the candidates in the general election forums, send them on over to us at news@tallahassee.com. I want to thank again everyone who has joined us over the last 2 grueling weeks. The League of Women Voters of Tallahassee, the partners of the Capital Region News Collaborative, and the studio crews from WFSU, WCTV, and WTXL who have made this excellent production happen. Thank you all. Have a great day, and we'll see you for the generals.